Welcome back to the SaaS Playbook. Today I'm joined by Vella, a builder, operator, and long-term voice in the SaaS and startup ecosystem. Roy's journey spans product, leadership, and collaboration at scale. And in this conversation, we unpack how experience, timing, and human judgment shape the way technology is actually built and adopted. Roy, welcome on board.
Thanks, Jenny.
So, Roy, looking back at your career before what you're building today, what patterns or decisions stand out as moments that most shaped how you think about startups and leadership?
Yeah, I guess for me, startups, even just the concept of a startup is about creative problem solving. Right. And that's what appeals to me most about it, that it's really about curiosity and often pain. I mean, as a founder, it's mostly a pain that you've had and you're like, yeah, maybe I could help fix that, and finding ways to creatively solve a existing problem that either you've experienced or witnessed or see a gap in the market. And I would say if there's one thing that I am very strong behind, it's around channel to market. Right. So I know people like to go direct and B2C and B2B. For me, one thing I've just witnessed over and over again in my career is that, the best salespeople wish that they had one more thing that they could sell to an existing customer. And a happy customer wishes they did as well. Like, what else you got? That was great. Like, you got anything else, And so I am just a huge fan. And by the way, I believe that because sales is about trust, and trust is a bridge, and trust is hard to build. But once you have a bridge, you want to send as much over the bridge as possible, right? And so I tend to be one of these guys who I just would prefer to go through a channel versus direct. I would prefer, so in our current company, I wouldn't be surprised that, it powered by Next Collab is the next way, right? Like that's and what we're doing, it makes sense that there's a third party channel that would bring it to customers.
I love that. From that standpoint of creating a solution, and in this world, there's probably not enough solutions within sales to be 100%. That's okay. We're all trying to get there at some point. And when you build the bridge, send an entire army if you can. I just sort of want to touch on Next Collab and what is the key points of difference? If someone's never come across Next Collab before, how would you explain to them what is the key points of difference of Next Collab's movements and solutions?
Basically, it's a collision of two huge trends. So first, that many, if not most meetings are happening in little windows on screens, the digitization of collaboration, and LLMs, AI. So for the first time ever, we can do a qualitative and quantitative assessment of meetings. And, I tell people you get what you measure. If you can measure something, you can do something about it. If you can't, nothing's going to change. And the metaphor I use most is we're an MRI machine for meetings. You get to look inside, see what's working, see what's not working, and do something about it. And it's also why a powered by strategy works for us. If I'm an MRI machine, I don't need to be the doctor. And there's plenty of management consultants, advisors, mentors, coaches helping teams be more effective and efficient and more productive. And I have a tool that, they can use a stethoscope if they have one, or they can use this MRI machine to look inside and see
What's really stuck out for me there, Roy, is on average, I sit on a Zoom or one of these meetings at least 8 times a day, right? Which means it's a tool. Perhaps it's not a tool that people have really looked into in terms of analytics and diagnosis perspective. Did you come in with the approach of it being a lot more human in terms of analytics and how that human would then likely to close, for example? Or is it more from a data perspective?
Yeah, the irony here is that it's not new. We have 75, 80 years of behavioral science, academic rigor, and studies around teamwork and collaboration and productivity. Like, our analytics engine applies 125 different behavioral science metrics to evaluate the meeting. What we lacked before was a ruler. There was just no way to do it before LLMs and before transcripts, right? I mean, like, I need a timestamped transcript and the ability of an LLM to understand context and content to actually apply all that behavioral science. The science isn't new, but the measurement tool is new, and that's what makes all the difference.
I'd agree. Also, the execution is extremely different now. And that's great that how we have all of these science-backed behavior studies, but unless we could execute it in some shape or form, it just kind of sits there and it's an unfacilitated tool.
Yeah, and what I really say, look, at the end of the day, what are we doing? If I distill it all the way down, it's feedback, right? I mean, collectively, we hate giving and receiving feedback. We don't want to give it. It's loaded with baggage. I'm your boss, you're my boss, we're peers. And we don't want to hear it. We're like, yeah, thanks for the criticism, right? Like the current model of feedback in the professional world is like an ice bucket of water once a year. In your annual review, you get a bucket of water to the face. People mostly go, and then they go about their day. And I'm like, if I could give you a drop of water every day, that's way more effective at growth, at progress, at making things better, you know? And that's what we're trying to do, really, at the end of the day.
Not only that, you're saving people a hell of a lot of anxiety because I've seen people be physically ill prior to going into a performance review. I'm like, hey, you're probably not doing your job well if you're that stressed about it, one. But two, it's not that bad. It's an opportunity to grow. And it's funny that we're having this conversation together because that is the foundational build of Hera Digital is for growth, whether that be within the business or whether that be within the individual. And it's collabs, right? Collaboration. So love it.
Yeah. And it's about nudging, right? Like I'm not trying to transform. It's not change management. It's just little behavioral nudges and it's the immediacy is what matters, right? Like I have the meeting, the dashboard comes up, I see the score, I go down. So our platform is in 3 bits. The core is called Pulse, meeting intelligence. That's what scores the meetings and provides the dashboard. We go down to what's called Signal. Each individual has their own signal. I might look in Signal and go, interesting, I shouldn't have important meetings in the mornings. My afternoons are 20 points higher than my mornings. And then it goes up to what's called Sync. We take all the Signal data and all the Pulse data into an interactive platform, which is really about information transparency and being able to interact with it. And it's those little behavioral nudges in real time. Like from today, I see the meetings and I go, yeah, I really shouldn't have interrupted as much as I did, or maybe I shouldn't have, well, whatever I'm trying to work on is what Signal and Pulse are trying to help me with. It's very individualized.
Nudges is a perfect balance of steady growth in terms of your own development. And it is nudges, right? It's not push off the cliff because that's where anxiety comes from. With everything you've seen across different companies and stages, what do you think early stage founders consistently underestimate when they're building first real product or teams?
Yeah, I mean, I often tell startup founders and my own team, as much as possible, you should avoid trying to be smart. What do I mean by that? Just ask the customer, right? Like if you're not sure if A, B, or C is the right approach, do all 3, like, and segment out your market. And it's like, okay, these guys are going to get A version. These guys are going to get B. And that's, by the way, that's the beauty of software. That is very hard to do in hardware. Like hardware is hard. With software, I can do A, B, and C and then see what's working, what's resonating. It appears that everybody loves B. Let's go with that. And if I was trying to be smart, I might have gone with A. But let the market tell you what's right and what's wrong, right? Like you can, the rapid prototyping and iteration and test and learn, like that is everything, and well, let's put it this way. That is the way to get to the right answer quicker than thinking you know better and you're just going to push something out and the customers are going to love it. Maybe.
I wanted to add to that is feedback loops is almost as important as the product or service offering itself.
Right. Exactly.
It closes the complete loop and like, okay, what do we need to fix? Fix, move on, let's test, measure again.
Yeah. Yeah. And, maybe you're Steve Jobs and you know better than the customer and you tell them what they ought to want and need, but most of us aren't. So better to iterate and have those feedback loops tell you what to do.
Let the data tell you what to do.
Exactly. Exactly.
So a big theme in your work is collaboration. I mean, it's in the name. How do you think about balancing technology, process, and the very human realities of how teams actually work together?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is for me transparency, right? Like when I say in the Sync platform, it's about information and data transparency. It's about bringing things to light. Like, and then that's part of the problem we're trying to solve is the silos that exist in large businesses, right? Like you and I remember back in the early days of PayPal, Europe was building something that already existed in California. This kind of thing. We have different silos of information, and the more transparent you can make that information, the better it is for everybody. And it helps collaboration because, you're very transparent with each other about what's working, what's not working, and we're on schedule, we're behind schedule, here's why, here's what we just learned last week, it's changed our strategy or whatever, right? Like I think people need to be, and by the way, transparency is about integrity and honesty and mutual respect, right? I mean, the psychological safety that Google talks about is about mutual respect and understanding each other and working together in a collaborative, mutually beneficial way.
Just touching on what you mentioned earlier is trust. If there's no trust and collaboration, integrity, transparency within the team, the customers would feel that, or your clients would know that, and there's going to be disparity. And that's the general foundation of a great team.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you a story. The best sales guy that PayPal probably has ever had. I mean, it didn't matter what gate they set for him, he always surpassed it. His customers loved him because of his integrity. We would push out new code, and if he thought it wasn't right or ready for them, he would say, "Don't update yet." He would let them know, "Oh, this you should definitely update this immediately. This is a fundamental change." And this guy, he got invited to Thanksgiving dinners and bar mitzvahs, and like his customers loved him because he put their interests first. He was like, this is what is working, this is what is not working. Do this, don't do that. And when he spoke, they said, whatever you say, Marty, we're gonna do it. And that's and as such, he outsold everybody. His customers absolutely loved him. And it was fundamentally trust, as you said.
Trust breeds longevity, but the funny thing you said that because people with quite an extensive background in sales all say the exact same thing. And the theme is trust, integrity, and transparency. And there's got to be a reason why successful salespeople have that same perspective. Why do you think that is?
Well, because at the end of the day, we're social apes, right? Like we are literally looking at each other, and our interactions, our collaborations are all about prior experience with you. So can I trust you? Can I believe what you're telling me? Can I rely on you for the future? And the more you build, and again, it goes back to what I said earlier. It's a bridge. And it's very hard to build a bridge over a river or over anything, but you do it brick by brick. And once you get the bridge built, people are like, okay, you put in the work, right? Like at the end of the day, trust is that bridge. And once it's built, people are like, I know I can rely on you because you put in the effort. And every time I've interacted with you, you've been straightforward. You've told me when you're going to miss a date. You've told me what was going to work and what was not going to work. Like, and again, we're social apes. We rely on each other for this kind of interaction, no matter what. I mean, this goes back, we're talking tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years. This is a system that is not modern. It's not a software system. Actually, it is a software system. It is the software of how humans interact, right?
Yeah, it's operating system. This is the hardware, and this is the operating system. And it's funny you say that because I've always referred to humans as a computer, essentially hardware, and then the motherboard, everything plugs in, whether you get upgrades and within skills or knowledge. So maybe that's a salesperson perspective. I'm not too sure, but hey, there's got to be some sort of similarity somewhere.
Sure. Yeah, totally.
So as products and teams grow, assumptions often break. What's something you were once confident about that experience later forced you to rethink?
That's an interesting question. I guess what I said earlier about A/B testing, right? Like at the beginning of my career, I think I was more confident in my ability to predict what people will do. It's that classic, what is it? Is it called the Dunning-Kruger effect? There's an effect where the more you know, the more you appreciate how little you know, right? And that is true. Like I was probably early in my career more confident about me saying, no, this is the right way. And what it really comes down to is you realize not everyone is you, right? Like, I mean, at the end of the day, I feel very, very strongly that I have something to learn from absolutely everyone. And if I don't learn from an interaction, that's my fault. I wasn't asking the right questions. I wasn't curious, but on any number, sometimes I get invites on LinkedIn from like high school or college students, and we hop on the call and they're like, oh, thank you for making the time. And I'm like, youth alone is a lens I no longer enjoy. Like they were born into a very different world than the one I was born into, right? Like, so there's always something to learn. So one of the things I would say is that it's not about confidence, it's about flexibility around what the right answer might be, because 90% of the time you're not the target market. The stuff that I sell, sometimes I'm the target market, but mostly you're not, right? Like, so you got to trust your target market, A/B testing, right? Like, that's what matters.
Feedback loop and continue. There's never a chance where you can't learn something, and it's a beautiful way to look at things. And much like this podcast, I enjoy talking to people, getting different perspectives from different silos, if you will, but then there's the same perspective across different silos, and that's always really interesting, and there's always something to take home from it. Assuming from the sort of hard part of growing well, when you think about scaling responsibly, not just faster, what feels like the hardest constraint leaders need to navigate today?
Yeah, it's funny. I've probably seen more companies fail from growth and cash management than anything else. Like that's not totally true. There are failures because it just didn't work. I mean, that's fine. But let's put it this way. It's surprising to me how often growth can kill a company, right? And it's a bit like getting out over your skis too much, right? You're running too fast, you're not paying attention to the fundamentals, and not unlike running, you will trip and fall. Like you need to and I think that's part of the harder part of growth is being willing to say no, being willing to slow down, having enough integrity to telling a client who asks for something that you cannot deliver it, right? Like, I appreciate that you want that. I love it. There's no way we'll do it in 2 weeks. Like that is a 6-week project, like, or whatever it is. Like again, going back to trust, integrity, transparency, like getting the realization that you want to make and meet your commitments. And sometimes growth, people shoot themselves in the foot. They want to say yes. They want to take the invoice. They want to get paid. And they know they're arrogant enough to think they'll make the impossible happen. It's like, no, yeah, we call it impossible for a reason. So you should say no and say, I can't do. And by the way, I will say with 100% confidence, it always works. So when you say to a client, I appreciate your need, I appreciate your timeline, I cannot meet that. Here's what I can do. Respect goes up, trust goes up, and they're like, okay, like, thank you for being honest with me, right? Like, and the companies that fail tend to get over their skis and stumble because they overpromise and underdeliver. I'm like, always underpromise and overdeliver. do not get that backwards. You get that backwards, and that customer's never coming back because you're not trustworthy. It's as simple as that.
That person will tell 10 other people, and you know what bad news spreads like, right? It spreads like the wildfire. But there is a lot of power in saying no, and especially businesses who are just starting off are more inclined to say yes, yes, and yes, and yes, and yes, because they need to get to manage that cash flow. And I can understand where people were coming from in that regard, but there is power in saying no, and that's more to protect yourself than it is anything, but also to add to transparency and it running over your skis is we need to normalize growing at a slower pace, but intentfully, rather than just run to the hills and just see what happens and we'll figure it out on the way. When there's no plan, it's just a loose goal if there's no plan in place.
Well, and there are problems that money and headcount can't solve. Like you cannot do it faster, no matter how much. And the reason people overpromise is they think, oh, we'll just hire some people who you need to train, who need to get like there's things that, they just take time, and being transparent and forthright with people is what builds trust over time. And that's what makes that's what a net promoter score is about. It's them saying, yeah, this person, whatever they tell you, they're going to do it. And they might do more, but they're not going to do less. Yeah.
Headcount does not mean growth. In fact, it actually is in reverse because you're investing into a resource where you have no idea really that it's going to work out.
Yeah. 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 So, yeah, I mean, I think that's very important. And I think people underappreciate. And so failure often comes from success, which is ironic, right? Like you think the success of more sales is going to drive, but it ends up being failure because you overpromise.
A leader of mine once said, "If you're not winning, you're losing," which means if you're not winning, then you're learning in some degree. And it's a very interesting perspective I've taken along with me for the past decade. I'm like, okay, what can we learn from this scenario if we're not winning, right? And again, feedback loop.
Feedback. Exactly. Yeah.
So, my last question for you, Roy. We've been able to power through the podcast pretty well while maintaining a great conversation. For founders and operators building in fast moving or noisy markets, what's one principle or mindset that helped you avoid costly mistakes over time?
Yeah. Well, noise in a market usually means a lot of competition or a highly competitive environment. And I tell people, from my perspective, it's a balancing act, right? So just because a competitor is doing something doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't even mean it's working for them. Like, right. So you do need to sort of trust yourselves, trust your team, trust your own customers. I have seen startups like basically rush to copy something that a competitor did that wasn't working for the competitor. like they made a big splash about it and did all this PR and marketing, and so they were like, oh, the competition is doing it, we got to do it. It's table stakes, and it's like, maybe it is. Have you tested it? Like, have you tried? Like, do you even know what their customers are feeling about it? Like, I guess my point is, when you talk about noise, I'm like, focus on your signal. Like, your signal, the promises you've made, what you're trying to deliver to your customer. That's what's important. All the other noise around your market, but it doesn't mean that they're not right. Maybe they are. Maybe eventually you go, yeah, we should add some of that and remove some of this or whatever. But it's about testing and learning. Just because it's available in the noise of the market doesn't mean it's right for you and for what you're doing, right? I mean, you can do different things. Yeah.
Almost overcorrect and just focus on what you're doing and deliver it well. I think that's the only way. And then if you are active within your feedback loops, your customers will tell you, hey, we would like this feature. Then you know indicatively, hey, maybe we should adopt this.
Yeah, what you just said there too, that's another thing that's dangerous in terms of noise in the market. In the software world, it's too tempting to let a customer drive your roadmap. So customers, as I said, A/B testing, ABC testing should drive your roadmap. But a customer, so for instance, I have seen the largest customer or the second largest customer of a software offering drive their roadmap. And all of a sudden, they're a bespoke software development house. They're like building to a customer's demands. And, sometimes you just have to say no to the customer. Like, yeah, no, with that custom work, we don't do that. You want customization of that, go over here. Configuration, and that's a key distinction. Customization is for you. Configuration is the way our software works. You can move this toggle. You can choose between these interfaces. Like, configuration, by definition, is for more than one customer. It works for a bunch of different people. Customization, I'm making it bespoke for you. And that is normally a mistake in the SaaS world. You should try to avoid that as much as possible.
Slippery slope.
It's a slippery slope, 100%. And that's exactly what you said. You do it once, and then they think, well, okay, now I can ask you to do whatever I want. Oh, crap. Yeah.
We can't deliver in that time. Please.
Exactly.
I can deliver in maybe 8 weeks, not 6.
Exactly.
That wraps up today's conversation, Roy. What stood out to me was how much progress still comes down to human judgment, not just technology. If this episode sparked a new way of thinking about leadership, collaboration, or building meaningful products, you're exactly where you should be, and we'll continue the conversation in the episodes ahead. Thank you so much for being a part of the podcast, Roy. It's been an absolute pleasure.
My pleasure, Jenny.